If you've ever met a leader who's just surrounded by people who are willing to do anything for them, who will literally run through walls, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's not actually about instilling motivation. It's about making your team feel inspired and making them feel invested in. One of the best ways that I know to invest in my team is by running a world-class one-on-one meeting. And I'm not talking about the bullshit corporate America 15-minute box-checking charade that most companies do. I'm talking about doing it for real. In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how I run these calls so they make a massive impact. But I'm gonna tell you right now, don't even bother watching this thing unless you are committed to being a leader that people will do anything for. Now, the format I'm gonna give you follows an agenda. If you want a downloadable template, just head over to my Instagram at Matt Verlaque and just DM me the word team and I'll send it to you. So when you're meeting with your team for a one-on-one, we always start with the wins. And honestly, I like to do this for any meeting that I run. I always start with wins. There's a very specific reason why I do this. It's not because we need a bunch of hugs and pats on the back. It's because high performers are always problem-oriented. Everyone's always looking to the next thing that they need to solve, the next mountain they need to climb, and we are absolutely freaking horrible at just taking a look in the rearview mirror once in a while and realizing how much progress we've made and how far we've come. The thing is though, if you never do this, if you never realize that you're making progress, your team is going to be constantly crushed under this feeling of being overwhelmed, and it's going to negatively impact their performance and their mental state over time. On the flip side of that coin, by starting the meeting off with the wins, you're going to take that team member and instill a sense of confidence in them. They will take a second and realize that they are making progress. Even if the work is incredibly freaking hard, they'll see that they're making progress week over week over week, and they'll have that great sense of confidence which tees up the other more challenging conversations that you might have to have in the one-on-one. So after I spend about 5 minutes or so on the wins, we'll move into project and goal review. Look, I don't know if you've ever heard the same thing I've heard from whatever, the conventional wisdom about one-on-ones where they're like, don't talk about work in your one-on-ones, it should be all about the person. Honestly, I think it's the dumbest freaking thing I've ever heard. Like, you're at work, these people work for you. It's okay to talk about work, and the reality is that if you have somebody who cares about being a high performer and they know that their main projects are off track or they're not hitting their numbers, they're not going to want to talk about whatever dumb shit you wanted to talk about. They're going to want to talk about that problem and get it fixed because high performers want to win. So right after we review the wins that we've already gotten in the books, I spend the next 5 minutes or so doing a review of all the open projects and all the open goals so we can proactively surface any problems that we need to address as we work through the rest of the meeting. If you don't do this, if you follow the old school wisdom about not talking about work, what's going to happen is your team member is going to feel like the entire meeting was a huge waste of time. They're going to show up with problems that they really want solved, and then you're going to spend 30 or 60 minutes together and solve 0 of those problems. This is why team members hate doing one-on-ones with their bosses, is if you don't actually address the issue. On the flip side, by pulling these things out up front and using it to drive the agenda for like the middle 40 minutes of this call, they're gonna feel like it's highly targeted, that you as the leader are showing up like a surgeon who can see right through them with like laser eyes, right? You just go through and figure out exactly what's going on in the business, exactly what's going on in the role, pick up the problems and help them work through the solutions in real time. It's killer. So the wins in the project and goal review, like pulling all that stuff out, I consider that to be the setup. This is where we transition into the actual work that moves the ball forward. And I affectionately call this section the list. Anyone on my team knows what it means. It's a list of things that I expect them to bring to the call that they need help with, that they need to be trained on, that they need to be coached on, a problem they don't know how to solve, a tricky scenario that they handled that they want feedback on. This is one of the biggest, most important expectations you can set with a team member, is that they need to show up to these meetings proactively, ready to pull information and coaching from you as the leader. And it's going to be a great data point on how like plugged in and engaged they are in the process of self-improvement in their role. Now, I'm gonna give you a word of warning here. Sometimes it can be really tempting as a leader, like you probably see all the problems, all the opportunities for growth, all the blemishes, all the stuff in the business that's making you lose sleep at night. If you show up with your own list and completely dominate the meeting, the other person on the receiving end of that conversation is going to feel like the entire call was one way, right? It was serving you as the leader and not serving them, and they can still show up and answer all your questions and not actually get anything out of it. You do not want to be a one-way leader. On the flip side of the coin, by putting their needs first and processing their list up front, You're gonna make them feel highly valued, like they can come to you with an ask, saying that they need help tuning something up about their work, and that you put that at the front of the line and make sure that you help them get the outcome that they want. This is usually like 35 to 40 minutes in length, and I will run the list all the way up until we have 10 minutes left in the call, which is when we stop, no matter where we are in the discussion, to do what I think is arguably the most important part of the entire one-on-one, which is bidirectional feedback. Now, there's some real nuance to doing this right, because I'll tell you, like, you've probably asked teammates for feedback before about how you're doing in your role or what needs to be better in the company, and they've probably looked at you and they've been like, oh no, boss, everything's great, everything's cool, I've got no feedback for you, you're amazing. And on the one hand, like, you really want to believe them in your heart, but your brain knows that there's a lot left being unsaid and you just didn't have the tools to draw it out of them. The questions that I'm about to give you and the methodology for doing this is how you overcome that. So here's a couple of rules and best practices for actually getting feedback. The first most important rule is that it is not optional. You don't want to only give feedback when it's like very difficult, high criticality feedback, because it's going to be insanely uncomfortable if you're not used to doing it. So the rule that I have with every one of my direct reports is that every time we have a one-on-one, we do feedback in both directions. It's not optional, you can't skip it, and if you don't have anything, then we're going to pause and think for a minute until we come up with something. You have to explicitly give people permission to nitpick you, because they're going to think they're being a pain in the ass if they tell you that I don't know, you looked mad on the all hands last week, and then inside you're thinking, man, it's actually just 'cause I forgot to eat lunch or whatever. There's all these little things, right? But if you are a leader, everything you say is heard through a megaphone and everything you do is examined under a microscope. So these tiny little bits of feedback that your team might feel are nitpicking or not that important, they can really move the needle for you as a CEO or a COO or a leader in any type of function. Now, the specific questions that I use, there's 2 of them, and we do them in order. I ask the direct report for feedback about me first. I want to receive the feedback before I give, so I can make sure I'm modeling the fact that I'm coachable and that I want feedback. And after I get the feedback from them, then I'll deliver feedback to them. There's 2 questions that I ask. The first question, what have I done in the past 2 weeks as a leader that you've loved? Right? You want to draw out positive feedback on purpose because you want to break this belief that all feedback has to be negative. Right? The second question, in the past 2 weeks, what's one thing that I could have done as a leader to get to the next level? This is the one where they'll try to skip it. This is the one where you can't let them. Once you get your answers, then the tables turn. You tell the person on your team what's one thing they've done in the past 2 weeks that you really loved, and what's something in their role that they could do differently to get to the next level. First, the leader receives feedback, and then they give it. Now, you gotta understand, if you don't take a deliberate approach to how you both receive and deliver feedback, your teammates are always gonna feel defensive when something bad happens and you gotta give it to them. Right? If the only time your name shows up in Slack or shows up on their phone calls is when something is off track, some KPI is red or a project is messed up, then every time you reach out to talk to them, their blood's gonna run cold and they're gonna be fearful of what you have to say. That's gonna make them be permanently defensive, and it's not a good place for good people to do their best work. On the flip side, if you can truly model the behavior of being a coachable leader and a leader who actively solicits feedback from their team, your team is going to feel incredibly inspired about working for you, about working with you, about working on your team, and they're going to be more motivated to actually give you the feedback you wanted in the first place. It is so important to running a high-performing organization. You cannot do it well without getting true, honest, and frequent feedback. Most people have somewhere between 3 and 9 or so direct reports, and if you try to meet with them every single week, what's gonna end up happening is you're gonna compress the meetings. You'll say you wanna do an hour, but really it's 30 minutes because who the hell can fit in 10 hours of one-on-ones, and then sometimes it'll be 15 minutes if you're busy, and then you're canceling them because of projects. Guys, it completely devalues the whole process. So I do them once every 2 weeks. I do them for a full hour, and I try like hell never to cancel them. I'll move them around if I have to, but I really, really try, unless somebody's off work, to make sure I get a one-on-one every 2 weeks with every single person on my team, and we run this exact process. The principle I want you to take from this is that you should optimize for depth instead of frequency. It's much less important that you do it every week. It's much more important that you actually have the space and the call is long enough and the container is created where you can have real conversations that actually shore up the relationship relationship and get the person operating in their best headspace. Now, again, if you want the template that I use to run this exact call, just hit me up on Instagram at Matt Verlaque, DM me the word team, and I'll send it to you. You can download it. It's a Notion template. You can use it in your business tomorrow. Outside of that, just subscribe to this channel. We're putting out new videos every single week, and I want to make sure you don't miss any. I appreciate the time. See ya.